All right, so this is the July 5th meeting of the Benchmarking and Efficiency Subcommittee of the Budget Task Force. The first order of business is we will review and approve the minutes from June 26th and June 28th as a subcommittee. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All in favor, Valerie?
I'm just going to make a, oh no, okay. I was just checking to see whether I had captured a vote count, but I labeled it as unanimous vote. So I just wanted to make sure if I had counted alternate members in my vote count, but it looks good. I'm aye.
Christina?
Aye.
Jenny?
Aye.
Vibu?
Aye.
And Amy's an alternate and I'm an aye. Great, thank you. So on our working group meeting for today, it's kind of an open-ended agenda to discuss what we've been working on and how we're going to prepare for next week. So next week, I think we're going to have work as a subcommittee at the beginning and then get back together with a larger group, the other subcommittees meeting at the same time today. So I know just for me, I put together a lot of documents into our shared folder. I made a subfolder just for our budget and for our benchmarking and efficiency committee. I was also able to pull down US Census data from all of our comparable communities. So that's in one of the spreadsheets. And I started a spreadsheet on the data sources and also started with Christina's spreadsheet, which I don't think is uploaded to the shared drive because we're still all kind of working in it together. I'm through probably 18 of the towns related to their health insurance allotments. So have that data in there. So just wanted to start out the meeting by pointing out that I did create that subfolder and that you can probably find a lot of the documents there that we've been working on as a group. So any questions, or does anybody else want to share anything that they've been working on that they need assistance from? I know there's been some back and forth on emails. Just want to remind everybody, we should just kind of, if you want to go between one other person on a back and forth with an email when you're going through data, just have it be another person, just so we're not violating open meeting law with documents, and then we can bring a full document back to the group. And then the other thing I want to talk about before we're done today is Dan and I mapped out kind of items for the public forum on July 24th and going through that, what we missed, what we might need, and how to get those words out. And I think, Valerie, you probably want some feedback if we haven't already issued that the Google form for feedback. We probably should get that out today or tomorrow as well. All right, I know we started with municipality last time. Do we want to start with schools this time related to any data that we've been going through for schools?
Bipu, do you want to talk through what you sent out? That was since the last meeting, right? Or is my memory blurred?
I can do that. Jenny, you want to show that?
Are you talking about Tableau's data?
Yes, that's what I shared with you guys. So
Yes. But who can share the screen?
I can do that. If
I
you
just
want.
made you the host, Jenny, so you can share your screen.
Okay. So can you guys see my screen?
Not yet.
Okay, hold on a second. How about now?
Yeah.
Okay, here is the data set. Vibu help us to put everything together as a per pupil expenditure for the total district expenditure, which includes the in-district expenditure and out-of-district expenditure. So from the top side of the data set, you are able to choose different group. Like we can choose administration, benefits, guidance, instructional leadership by different category. Like if you want to see what's our benchmarking compared to the comparable district, you can see from there. If we choose just administration, we can see where we at as Westford. We are $371.3 compared to other comparable district. So that's the way we can find out the difference between us and the other school districts. Is there any category you guys want to see? So I can click over here.
So I, I was hoping we could discuss as a subcommittee whether to include Concord Carlisle. So I was able to pull each district that we've been using, their number of buildings and their grade level configurations. And I realized that the regional districts can set themselves up differently, right? Some are just regional at the high school level, some are regional for the whole district. So when we look at like DESI's line item for Acton Boxborough, it pulls all of their PK to high school data. But Concord Carlisle, I believe in this data set is only showing the high school. And DESI actually has separate line items for Concord and then for Carlisle. So I don't want to sign anyone, like I think the accurate way to include them would be to find a way to like merge those 3 line items or remove them. Because right now we're comparing ourselves to just a high school, and I don't know if that's skewing the clusters and the averages.
I can do that. That's easy. I have data, so I can bring Concord and Carlisle and merge these as a 3 together. So we can do that.
As one like bar
Yeah.
with that. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Like I said, I don't want to sign you up for it if it's a big ask. Another way would be to leave it out. Okay.
Easy.
So actually, we do have another question to ask Weibo, if you can help us with the general funds total general funds per pupil expenditure, because for DESI's data set, it breaks down to general fund total expenditure and other revolving account, federal grant, state grant, and other special revenue, the total expenditure. So it will be very interesting to see the town's allocation based on general fund. Is that something easy to tweak for the data, or?
Easy, Jenny. This
That's great.
yeah. Means I can bring a filter which says general or GVC or GCP and total. So you can use any of those 3. So there is an additional filter we can bring here.
That's wonderful. So we can see the town's allocation compared to other school districts.
Yeah.
Can I just ask, this is all coming from DESI's data, correct?
Yes,
Just so we
that's
know the
coming
data
from
source.
DESI's data from fiscal year 18 to fiscal year 22. But the fiscal year 22's data has not been uploaded to their website for the final number, because there are lots of districts, they are going through the annual audit, or they might have different kind of amendment, just like we just did one. So that's why the formal data on DESI's website is fiscal year 21, that was latest. But this spreadsheet, the data set, captures everything from fiscal year 18 to fiscal year 22.
Okay, thanks.
And just to help someone find the data that's using for this, Jenny, correct me if I'm wrong, it's the per pupil X data set document in the folder, right?
Yes, the original data set, I can upload that because I added like a different DAR district, adjacent district into the benchmarking spreadsheet. Vibu is using like a different sorting of the data, but I can upload the original data set from DESI. So because we both use the same data set and we did some manipulation for the data for the analysis purpose, but the original data set was not in the budget task force folder, but I can upload that one.
Okay. I just thought if somebody wanted to see the numbers in a table form too. Can we hang on the idea about general fund versus grant and revolving? And Christine, I know maybe you have a good amount of sort of school budget looking years to draw upon. If you have any thoughts on that, like, I mean, I'm a little torn. I feel like it's a good way to filter out how districts handle like transportation, right? Because that would be revolving funds, or for their regional, then it's coming from the state. But you know, it's not that there are some staff that are paid by, there are some other categories that are paid by revolving funds and grants that I don't know if we would miss anything by looking at that either. So I mean, it's tempting because I feel like this group is tasked with really thinking about this in terms of town allocation. So the general fund would speak to that more, but obviously schools are funded by not just that alone. So I don't know, I just was wondering if we could have a little bit of a discussion on, it sounds like Vibhu can give us both, right, with a filter. So I don't think we would lose the total picture. I just want to be careful if we're drawing any conclusions from one versus the other.
So I'll just throw in my 2 cents on this. Looking through the school budgets for the last, I don't know, few years, as a finance committee member, I sort of want to see the total spend, and I don't really care where it's coming from. So I want to see general fund, grants, state aid, whatever, revolving, whatever it is. And then sort of in the back of my mind, or as a secondary step, I'm looking at what's hitting the general fund, because it's really difficult, at least in one particular, let's say, like if I'm just looking at Westford's budget, if the source of funds for a particular line item are shifting from year to year, then if I'm just looking at what's hitting the general fund, it's going to look like that spend is going all over the place, when in actuality it's not. So it's, at least for me, it's clearer to just see how much is the school spending, and then as a secondary look to see where those sources are coming from, just so that initially you can kind of see trends, and you can sort of see exactly how much money is being spent on each of the different functions. And we can compare, again, a little bit more of an apples to apples comparison when you're comparing to other towns. Because if you're looking at, let's say we looked at transportation and you didn't know that the other towns got a lot more money from the state, then it's going to look like they're spending nothing on transportation. You're going to be like, well, how the heck is that? How are they doing that?
Yeah.
So that's just sort of my thoughts.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to capture that. I think, thank you. Another thought I had as I was looking through this, I think it would be a separate tableau. Am I saying that wrong? Tableau. I think it would be a separate shot comparison, but I noticed too that DESI breaks it down by school. And I was looking at it and saw some differences kind of jump out at me between our schools. And so I thought that might be another lens to look at as benchmarking, like between our K-2 schools and between our 3 to 5 schools, and comparing our 2 middle schools. Does that make sense? I think it was in one of the DESI data sets, but I can't find it right now in the per pupil.
I have not seen that, Valerie, that if they have all by each function code, if they have it by school. I have not seen that one in DESI. Jenny, you might be aware because the data set which we are using, it is by town district, yeah, the school district, yeah.
The one, Barry, you were seeing the one separate by school. That's just for the federal and state grant expenditure. That's totally different spreadsheet. So that's
Oh,
not
okay.
in this per pupil expenditure calculation. That's different spreadsheet.
Okay. Is that one on the shared drive?
Yes, I believe so. I need to look.
It might only be helpful if it breaks it down by function code. Otherwise, we could just look at the numbers ourselves without a visualization.
It's not in the benchmarking folder, but that's in the school benchmarking folder. There's another folder I created like a couple weeks ago. That spreadsheet was there. But for the
Okay.
Tableau, we can click by different function codes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So maybe, like, again, I hate to like ask for something when I don't know how much time it's taking you in the background, but I just think that maybe there's some learning too when we compare schools.
So if we want to compare school, we probably need to use different data set because that's different data spreadsheet. So that's another question for Weibo. Can we use another spreadsheet to compare by school?
Jenny, we can do any comparison, and as far as creating these sheets, it's like 30-40 minutes job. It's not a lot of work. Only thing is, if I see, Valerie, you shared with me number of schools, etc. There will be a lot of variations or in terms of number of kids in each school, high school versus middle school, etc. So it's just how you will do comparison. Now you are doing comparison at a town level. Either we will say, okay, let's do comparison at high school, middle school, and primary school. That can be a good comparison to understand how much we are spending on each of the school. The challenge you are going to face is not every town has the same configuration. Some, like we have 4 different, some towns has pre-K to 8. So you will not be able to have a very conclusive comparison if you are looking from that perspective. That's the only challenge, like how you will compare pre-K to 8 without group.
I only meant to compare function code between like Westford schools. So you would have like one view showing like our 3 K-2 schools by function code, another view showing our 3 to 5 schools by function code, you know, Day, Abbott, and Crisafulli all compared by function code. Does that make sense?
Okay.
And
so,
only, I mean, only if other people think that could be valuable. I don't want to have it just be one thought I'm having and create the work.
okay. So if I understood it correctly, you want to compare like how 3 primary schools or middle schools in between each other, how they are spending.
Right.
Not with other towns. Is that right? Or you
Correct.
want to,
Yeah. Just us.
that's if we have that data. Yeah.
Barry, another thing we have to think about, because the other data set was sent by Tom, that data does have each schools for Westford, but it doesn't break down to different function codes. So
Okay.
we can only compare by each school, but it doesn't have the capability from this data set to do each function code.
Okay.
That's their expenditure by district level, state and local, non-instructional expenditure, and the district level federal non-instructional expenditure. So that's combined of general fund and state grant and also federal grant. So that's completely different data set.
Okay. All right. That's fair. Thank you. And maybe it's, we can look at that, but we don't need the visualization if it's not to that granularity with the function code. Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was helpful to
Mhm.
process out loud.
Can I go back to the DESI data? Is there a description somewhere, maybe on the DESI website, as to what's included in some of these function codes? Or I guess maybe my question is, if there's something, and I'm thinking, let's say as an example, health insurance or capital expenditures, if it's not specifically in that school district's budget, does it show up in these numbers?
I
Yeah.
think that's showing up in their numbers because if you see the DESI's data set, I can put that into the share screen over here. Can you guys see this?
Yeah.
Yeah, that operation and maintenance expenditure that includes employers' retirement contribution, separation cost, insurance costs for active employee, and insurance costs for a retired employee. It seems like it capture all those insurance costs and capital expenditures.
Okay.
So Christine, usually a town has to work with the school department. If it's included in the general budget, when they're doing the report back to DESI, they have to capture that. So it might be in two different places. So that's where we just need to be careful. It could show up in the general operating budget, but it could also show up in the DESI data as
Right.
well.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's right. Because for the end of year report, we are required to report those expenditure in the end of year report. So for the town side, they also report those expenditure as well. Because end of year report has different schedule, which reports school committee's expenditure, town's expenditure by different schedules. That's why DESI's data also capture those data.
Okay, so it does. And so like our Chromebooks go through capital, that makes its way somehow in to the DESI spending as well?
If you see here, we have rental lease for equipment. We have rental lease for building. Other fixed charges. So for those capital, I'm not quite sure. If that's purchased from the town's free cash, maybe it's not captured here.
It may not make a huge, I don't know, but I just know that, you know, we potentially handle capital differently than some other districts, especially regional districts. And again, it may not make a large difference per pupil spending, but it could add up, and or it could explain certain things.
And to your point, Christina, I think it also then just makes us wonder, is there other things, right, that are, you know, so it's like,
well,
we know of this one example that may not be
right.
showing up, but it's like, what don't we know that could also be leading to it? But
Exactly.
I would say, yeah, and I've been struggling with that myself. I would say that the more time I've spent with some of this data, I am accepting it for what it is, right? I feel like that we're going to be using this for some comparisons, and then like the idea of the interviews or thinking of one or two or three to like kind of dive into is just kind of where my brain has sort of
Yeah.
settled on it, if that makes sense.
Right. I think so. And again, as I'm looking at more towns, I mean, there are some towns that have literally every expense related to their buildings, from utility costs, custodial repairs, like everything in a completely different department on the municipal side. And so I'm sort of, as I looked at, when I was looking at libraries a little bit closer, I went, oh, shoot, some of that stuff isn't in there. And I was trying to figure out, well, how do you, do you pull that out or whatever? And I guess it sounds like that should get captured in the DESI data if a town does that.
Yes, because
yeah.
in theory, they should capture those data, but from here, like we do report long-term debt, short-term debt, those interest expenditure for the end of year report. But from here, it doesn't seems like we have those, they pull those data into the spreadsheet. If you see in the line 98, 5,400 short-term interest, there's nothing there.
And what should that
So
be? I'm not sure what that line
that's
means.
like short-term debt or long-term debt. Like
Okay.
we have some building for the long-term debt or short-term debt. It doesn't give us those numbers here, but we do report those numbers for the end of year report from the town side.
What do you
for
have at the
insurance-
top? Jenny, what do you have this filtered to though at the top? Because right now you're showing total is 0 too.
Yeah, I'm
You're in
filter
Acton.
Acton Boxbow. Let me see Westford.
And like you said, if 2022 is not audited yet, maybe use 2021.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, let's
Okay.
see.
I don't think it registered the Westford change.
Mm.
It's still set.
Well,
No, I'm just checking, does Acton Boxborough has anything? No.
and I mean, Acton Boxborough could be a little different too, because it's regional, right?
Yeah. No, it doesn't show any long-term debt or short-term debt here. But definitely insurance are covered here.
Active employees, okay.
So sorry,
Okay.
just to confirm, Jenny, when you say when you personally do the end of year report, you put something in this line item. So it's concerning that we're seeing zeros, correct? Is that what you're saying?
It's not concerning because those debt expenditures from town side, not from us.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying what
But it's
kind of
another
data,
example of, okay.
right? DESI, what kind of data DESI is pulling out over here? What kind of data is not?
Okay, so can I just, so you're saying that you report it, but you're not sure what DESI is pulling into this particular data set. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Okay. So we're still back to, we're not 100% sure what's included and what's not. Okay, good to know.
2 steps forward, 3 back.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if anyone else has anything, to kind of keep going on the school stuff, but I'm still sort of struggling with how to compare different districts at a lower level, even with all of this data, just given the whole discussion we just had about what's included and what's not. Like, so I'm just sort of struggling with how to take that second, layer look at what are other districts sort of spending in different categories, and can we learn anything from that?
I wonder if it would make sense for, I'm going to say something and inherently be signing myself up for it, but is by, I feel like I kept thinking that like this overview data would be the first step and then the dive in. But I wonder if it makes sense to pick 1 or 2 districts to do sort of what you did and look at like their actual school budgets and sort of reverse engineer or recreate what we're seeing on the DESI data and see if things seem to line up. And I'm willing to do that. I just would love help figuring out which districts you all think would be valuable.
And Valerie, just to add on, all this data I have in Tableau. So whatever slicing, dicing we want, this is like what I showed is a big display for ease, but we can do all those things. Like you can just tell me, Vibo, I need this in this format in Excel sheet. You will
Thank
get.
you.
Yeah.
I think just so it's clear, I think what I'm referring to is sort of going to these district websites, opening up their, budget, kind of like how what the school committee votes on line items that way, like basically what each committee and superintendent review and stuff and see publicly without the DESI data pull. So it would be manual, and that's okay. And like I said, maybe that needs to happen to help us trust this data or to tell us we're off base. It just, I guess, would be interesting to think to sort of use this discussion point to pick 2 or 3 as a consensus.
I would be willing to help you with that if you need help, Valerie. And I think, at least for me, I think it would help because it definitely helped on the municipal side to do that. So
yeah,
I'm guessing it may do the same on the school side.
Okay, which one do you think?
I don't know. So Acton Boxborough has a ton of information. Like I just started looking at some of their budgets last night, and man, they go through a lot of comparisons and a lot of different stuff. So on the one hand, maybe that would be a good place to start, especially since what I've been seeing is Acton is on not only our school list, but our town list. I asked a real estate agent in town that I know, which which towns are we competing with for home buyers? Acton's on that list. I just, even though they're regional and that sort of throws a monkey wrench into it, I kind of feel like I'm sort of leaning towards Acton being one of those towns that we dive into and do a comparison on. So that might work out.
Yeah, great.
Chelmsford was another one that was sort of on multiple lists. But I haven't looked at their schools really much at all. And they're, the only issue with them is their budget, at least on the municipal side. I don't think that included the school budget as well. At least the document I was looking at was not searchable. Like, I don't know what format that's in, but that was a nightmare. So that's my hesitation there.
I'm more than happy to learn from your experiences. So maybe we could keep talking about 3 or 4, and then if one is just really challenging to pull the data out of, I move on to the next one. So Chelmsford tentatively, I can't, oh, there it is.
Can I just, one thing real quick? I know when we met as a big group the last time, they said, well, let's make sure, why are we choosing this other school, right? And so if we're handpicking within our sampling, do we really need it to be random? And do we need to do sort of a random, do you know what I'm saying? To make that a proper sampling and not an intentional.
I do, Amy, and I totally see that point. I honestly kind of go back and forth after, again, I'll just talk about the town side. After looking at all of those different town budgets, there are certain towns that stuck out to me as we could learn from them. I know that's
that's a good enough reason, I think. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And so I was kind of back and forth on, like, I don't know how to do that objectively with some sort of criteria, because I could not come up with, well, what criteria do I use to pick them? It was much more of a gut feel. And, as I looked across, and I'm just going to say Acton again, but as I looked across Acton's budget, they spent less than us on almost every municipal category. And I don't understand how. So it was more of a curiosity for me of like, how are they doing this? Because their taxes are higher. I think maybe just they shift more to education, but I don't know. Anyway, I'm sort of babbling, but it was sort of difficult I think it was a little difficult to do what Erica wanted and come up with something objective, but if somebody else has another idea, I'm all, that's great.
I think that within these communities that we have chosen, I think it needs to literally be a random sampling. If you don't want that gut feeling piece in there, you have to generate a sampling. It's like picking a name out of a hat, but computers do that. That's to have a true, I don't know that, I'm not sure if that's how you want to go. But just to her point, I just wanted to bring that up because there is that explaining piece, why these communities, why not the others, but
I think that's fair. It's interesting because I feel like there's two edges to that, right? One is to sort of say that we did it sort of objectively, right, and got a data set that was I don't know, representative or covers, sort of some good data like guidelines. But to Christina's point, I feel like there are some districts that, like, if we randomly pick Tingsboro, I don't know that we're going to learn a lot, right? Because we just don't apply, we don't really compare to them enrollment wise or building wise. They're just our geographical neighbor. So do you know what I mean? I think there's value in, like you're saying, about balancing our data set with something that we don't compare with. But if we're going to do a deep dive, I feel like it's more valuable if we think they're more like us and chosen intentionally, and then we can maybe draw some conclusions and learn from. So I don't know I don't know how to rectify that with the idea of sampling it, but
I sort of agree, because, like, again, if Drake were to get picked out of the hat, I don't think we could learn anything from them. They're just their budgeting is, or just their spending just seemed to be so different from ours. I don't know.
Oh,
well, and then perhaps it's something to do with some of this data that we can then see, and then the criteria is communities that are most similar in what are the areas that are most important to us, right? I know we're talking about salary gaps, or we choose a couple of topics and see, I don't know. I agree with what you're saying, but in true statistical analysis and things like that, there's always that other piece of that. So if we can just name some criteria that's our goals, right, and what we're looking for, then we can support whatever schools we choose, I think.
see,
help. Go ahead. Yeah.
I can suggest something which we usually do. If we look into the clusters, we can see where in different categories, in which clusters we are sitting. For example, when I look into pupil service, I am talking school data. It seems like we are in upper quartile in comparison to a lot of others, while in many other areas, we are in lower quartile. And then say why we are in upper quartile in this group, and what are those districts which are spending low and what we can learn from there. So you can look into that kind of approach also, say, because means again, I am new, I am trying to understand stuff as an outsider. So in certain areas, I was like, why we are spending so less on instructional areas, why our coaching spend is much higher than a lot of districts. So if we can find 3 or 4, not many, where there can be an impact of moving things from one bucket to another bucket and can improve the quality of teachers or the students, that can be valuable for public. So there you can look into high level data from Tableau, find out what are those 3-4 areas. Then we can go and get the deep dive Excel sheet details and say, okay, let's go deeper and go into town details. This is something the way I looked into some of this stuff in the past year.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Because in the function code, we can see different color by cluster, so we can go through different function code, find the same color, like a couple different function code, find the same cluster, and we dive deep into those clusters, school districts.
Can
I
can we go
think we're
back to
all-
that sheet maybe? And-
Yes.
I think we're, I mean, I feel like that's, I had started doing that like methodically by function code and looking for where we fall in the clusters. And then that's when I sort of stopped and thought about Concord Carlisle. And I didn't know, again, I don't totally understand. I'm new to the clustering, so I wasn't sure if it was, I wanted to wait before going through every one of them to see if we change Concord Carlisle or take it off to draw any conclusions, because I didn't know if it would affect
So Jenny,
um,
can you
the
just,
coloring.
yeah, Jenny, can you just refresh it? Because I was able to
Oh.
add Concord Carlisle. So if you just refresh it.
Oh my gosh, while we're talking, that's amazing.
Done.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah.
So it seems like we are in a orange cluster. Let me choose just one for custodian service. Let's see. Custodian service.
See, some of
that's-
these amaze me. Like, why is Natick so like ridiculously low? Like that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
like they must
if
be
there's
paying
an
for-
outlier, probably we just need to look into that, what's going on with that category.
And Jenny, if I can advise small thing, maybe first you start with the group and then go and take the function. So if you will say take admin, and
Okay.
so in admin, you will see only the function which are related to admins.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of lost in this data. I mean, it was so interesting. I started looking at sort of just Westford, and I was doing 2019 sort of as a pre-COVID data point,
Mhm.
and then 2022 too, like not even by function code really to look at how we compare to other districts, but how we compare to ourselves and what has increased in the last couple of years. So, I mean, it's just a really powerful tool. Thank you again. I just want to confirm for Concord Carlisle, did you get from your data set, Vibhu, can you confirm which, I just want to make sure that you got all the different schools that fall under that district.
I got Concord, I got Carlisle, I got Concord Carlisle. So these three
Okay.
I combined, and
Okay.
that's where you see 4,022 students now.
Perfect. Thank you. Because Carlisle, I know, just has like one school. I just want to make sure we weren't forgetting it. Thank you.
I see small issue. Okay, we'll fix that.
Any other districts jumping out to do a deep dive on?
So I was more on, if you Jenny go to the pupil service and take all the functions there. So if we just go to the pupil service.
So
there's
do I
a
need to
little-
choose which one
You can
in the
take all.
function?
You can take all so that. So now when I look into this, this is like we are on a second highest quartile. In most of others, we are on
Lower end.
or the second. Here it is like third. We are spending 1780, which is quite high.
Mhm.
And then we can look into where, if we compare with other district which has similar size, like
Mhm.
sort, etc., in which of the function this is high or is it across? So if you can look into those and say, hey, this look little high, and can we
Mhm.
address that and understand it, like why Winchester is quite low in this one or Milton.
Yeah, let me give you what's included in the pupil service. That basically that's the facility cost. like custodial service, heating for building, utility costs, maintenance of ground buildings. That's facility department's expenditure. It seems like a
Jenny, I think it is 3,100 to 3,600, the above one.
oh, the above one.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
That's my understanding.
Okay. Oh, those are operation and maintenance.
Right.
Sorry. So attendance, parent liaison, medical and health service, transportation service.
So it seems maybe the transportation is something which is big, and then the food service is big. So these two look the big.
Food
one.
service, because that number we
Hmm.
already fixed, but
Right.
that was the original data. So it's
Right.
supposed to be 2 million. That was the original data.
Right.
Because that's the original data set.
Right. But still like 3 million and 2 million. These are the two heads which are the biggest in comparison to others. So if you go back to Tableau, you can look into those two heads, how we are performing. But I'm just sharing like how you can look into some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, no, that's great. Vivian, were you able to update your data set with the 2 million for food service?
yeah, that's already done.
Oh, okay. All right, great.
Yeah.
So if you will go in people service and say food as a function and say, is this food service is something which is impacting us significantly? And probably yes, this is like quite high versus some other towns.
This is fascinating. I hesitate to get too much into the weeds during this meeting, although I would love to. But what exactly can I just ask, what is food services? Because I thought that our food service budget was sort of off on its own and didn't really impact the general fund. So I'm a little confused on what this really means.
Yeah, because these data, these are the per pupil expenditure for total, which includes general fund and revolving accounts, federal grant, state grant, other special revenue fund. That's why you see food service
Gotcha.
here.
Okay.
So that was part of the reason we asked Vibru, can he help us with just general fund so we can see what's the difference between general fund and total per pupil expenditure.
Gotcha. Okay. That makes more sense.
Yeah, that's revolving account.
Oh, I'm muted. Can you just leave something up and just explain the clustering, the coloring again for me? Is it always going to be 2 red? Like are the
So
yeah.
So what the tool do, we can create as many cluster. It is like you create quartiles or you create percentile. So it is gonna look into all the towns and say what are statistically close towns and divide everything into the 4 clusters. So here you see one cluster where there are 2 towns which are spending a lot, like Needham and Natick. Then there is Littleton, which has significant difference from the other, that is the second cluster. Then lot in blue, which is the third cluster, and lot in orange, which is the lowest cluster. So based on
Okay.
so you can see where we sit. So in this one, it seems we are in the lowest cluster, means we are spending low in comparison to many other.
Okay.
And within low, it seems we are very low in this administrative function, significantly low. So there might be things for other towns to come and learn. Or maybe sometime as I am going deeper into data, sometime it's maybe there is pension or some other stuff for people which we might be getting from, or insurance, which we might be getting from some other places in other towns. That's a part of their admin cost or something. Means that's going deeper. I don't know what that means, but it seems like at least in administration we are significantly low.
Thank you for that refresher on clustering. I appreciate it. 'Cause the more I look at it, I was second guessing myself, but I appreciate that.
So I know we have about a half hour left, maybe a little bit more. Again, this is amazing data. I'm wondering if there's any final questions to wrap up school data, and then kind of moving on to discuss planning for the public forum and any wrap up of the final impact, the feedback form, and then discuss our next steps to prepare for next week.
Yeah, that sounds good. I'll start with a deep dive of Acton Box Pro, and maybe Chelmsford, and then can always sort of, if someone's looking at the data and has a suggestion, please email me directly. Otherwise, I'll start with those two.
All right, Christina, is there any outstanding on municipal data? I know you have a bunch of questions into Dan, and he's working on pulling that in. I just want to make sure we're not losing out on municipal data today. If there was any questions or thoughts that we need to touch base upon as a group.
I guess like I just got Dan's data, so I haven't had a chance to look at that. But as far as next steps, I was thinking we're kind of getting close to talking to our department heads, possibly figuring out when and how to reach out to other towns. And I'm kind of going back and forth a little bit. Like, I almost wonder if there's a little bit of a slight iterative process where I was talking to Dan last week when I was trying to get some information from him. And I think we're at the point where if we're going to be looking at particular departments within Westford and comparing them to other towns, I think we're at the point where we kind of have to look at like a little more in depth as to what services we provide versus what other towns provide. And that's a little trickier for me to figure out. And I'm thinking that we may want to ask our department heads, give them maybe a list of 5 or 6 towns and ask them if they could quickly sort of look and say, do you know what the big differences are maybe in services, or why our budgets are so far off? If it's not something obvious like the number of FTEs or, something else sort of jumps out at us, and then sort of come back, see what they say, and then go to, and I wasn't sure how we were going to go to the other towns, if we were going to pick X number of towns and just talk to their town managers or whoever their town administrator is, or what we were going to do at that point. But maybe then go to them and see what we could learn in those particular towns. But I sort of felt like at this point, at least personally, I would need the help of our department heads at a minimum to kind of do that services comparison, because it was difficult for me to look and say, oh, they do this and we don't, if it wasn't obvious. So I don't know what other people
I know
think
we're
about
running
that.
short on time to October 1st, but I'm wondering if that's a better conversation for the whole group to have. So we're approaching the outreach in one formal way. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Probably. That's actually a good point as well.
Jenny, do you want to hide your screen? Since we switched topic. Christina, I think that sounds reasonable, right? Like, you're kind of asking for a quick self-evaluation from the department heads. And I don't know what networking looks like, if there's like formal networking, but I would imagine that there's an understanding of what Westford offers that maybe somebody else doesn't.
Right. That was sort of what I was thinking. And even if they just went through their budgets and their web pages, my guess is the department heads would be able to pull out, oh, we do this, they do this, a lot easier and a lot more accurately than we could. I mean, I think there's a benefit probably to somebody who isn't really on the inside to kind of look and say, what is this like? But I think it might need a little more interpretation by somebody who sort of understands that area.
All right, I'll add that to the agenda for next Wednesday. And if anybody has any thoughts between now and then, just jot them down to be ready to talk on that.
So, Christina, I just shared before this meeting the tableau for town. Maybe that is something you can give them, where they can look into it and say, hey, my number per person look high, and what might be the explanation, or
Yeah,
even if it look low.
exactly. Right. I mean, I was trying to narrow down which towns we would ask our department heads to really dive into, just so that they're not looking at 20 some odd towns. But I also sort of wanted to leave it a little open-ended to them to say, if there are other towns that are not on your little short list that you think we could learn from, or you know of something interesting, then great, like, let us know. It was difficult to, I found myself sort of always picking Acton. I felt like in any department, they seem to be somebody to learn from. And then it became a little less clear. I wasn't, in other departments, I wasn't sure which ones to really pick out. There's nothing that sort of jumped out, or the data was all over the place, so it was a little random.
Christine, I need to leave because I have something
Sure.
urgent to do. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sibu.
All right. You want to switch over to any feedback on the public forum of what we might need to prepare or bring or advertise? Do you want me to bring up the form that I was using? Okay.
Yeah, that would be great.
I don't share my screen often, so I'm going to do my best here. All right, do you see all my emails or do you see a form?
We see the form.
Okay, good. All right, so I just laid it out. I'm a very have to put everything out as a kind of a brain dump and then reevaluate. So we have the Budget Task Force Public Forum. We're going to be on Monday, July 24th. In talking with WestfordCAT, the Millennium Meeting Room is better than the library because that's already set up for WestfordCAT, and it does hold, we think, an adequate amount of people that we think will show up, as well as we can run that as a hybrid meeting out of that location. We'll have a web link for people to join hybrid, and then I just have bring them materials to bring, an invite list, where we're going to put the invite, and then an agenda, and then kind of next steps. So I didn't know, I'm happy to type in this as people have thoughts or comments, or if there's anything I'm missing. And if you want me to scroll, I'm happy to do that too.
Just like I think from the agenda down would be good.
Sure.
Great.
So that's everything.
I'm sort of debating whether we need to discuss like the report outline and the final report, if those, well, let me ask what those lines meant in your head, Kristen.
Yeah, so the report outline is just to let the members of the public know what we're researching and what we're getting information on. And then what was the other one? I'm sorry.
That final report towards the bottom.
I have public feedback and with website and contact final report. That will have additional public comment on the final. We'll have additional public comment on the final report. Or I guess the draft final report.
I guess the outline I think is fine to sort of give them an idea of sort of what we're looking at and how we're going about it. I hesitate on the final report just because and again, this is just maybe the way I think of things. I sort of like, I think we need to get through the research and the analysis really
No,
before
no,
we.
we would present it towards the end of the presentation that we will be requesting additional public comment when we're close to the draft final reports.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. Thank
Okay.
you. Okay.
Yep.
I don't know if this is where you were originally headed to, Christina, but to me, I would thin out sort of any logistical overview, like to just get to the point of what are your questions and what are your thoughts, right? Because I feel like that's, if someone's interested in our report outline, those are sort of in our meeting documents, and you can be watching our meetings. But if someone's taking an hour or two out of their time, I really want to make sure that we are hearing, you know, from them and getting that like organic discussion going. And sometimes I feel like when a meeting like this spends too much time, then we end up rushed or near the end of you know, that feedback session.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I'm thinking our intro,
Very
10 minutes, you know.
like, I mean, it might be nice to like have a slide about levy limit or have a slide about budget challenges. I almost even wonder if those are like as not backup, but like wait for the question. Does that make sense? Like, I don't know. Maybe it makes sense to lay it out beforehand. I'll need to marinate on that a little bit more. But you know, some of these things could certainly be prepped or like thrown on slides ahead of time, so that if it comes up,
Right.
Oh yeah, here it is, quick. But not to like have this big presentation that we're stepping through, you know, for 20 minutes before we really get into the discussion, I guess would be
Okay.
the theme of my comment.
Yep.
I would agree with that.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
feel like this should be a little bit more of a open kind of listening session.
Yeah. Even like we could put some thought into like the setup of the room, right? To like, depending on how many people we get in the room, you know, just to really make sure we're either like chairs in a circle, or maybe it's like little smaller breakout chats. I don't know what would sort of invite that more, and it sort of all depends on who's in the room, but I don't know. Should think a little bit more.
Okay.
Along those same lines, Valerie, sorry, I just wanted to jump on that idea for a second.
please.
I assume we'll have, you know, some way for people to sort of get up at a microphone or get up and ask a question, but do we want to have like a sort of a written option or text in, I mean, not text in option, but if somebody doesn't feel comfortable getting up and asking their question, could we have some sort of way for them to submit it, almost as if they were hybrid or if they were virtual, but if they're in the room?
Yep.
We could probably have the form, like once we finalize that, we could have that sort of more accessible, so that it doesn't necessarily have to be something we answer live, but you know, we're still capturing it, because you're right. I think that in that having the discussion, it might trigger things that people may not want to say out loud or something, and having like a big QR code in the URL for the feedback form might be a great way.
And maybe old school paper and pen
Yeah,
or pencil,
sure.
just in case, you know.
That too. I'll volunteer to transcribe to our Google Sheet to capture it. But and I see like the invite list. I almost too wonder to I mean, I feel like summer participation might be low from the general public, but I would caution, I guess, against sort of filling the room with the people we expect to be chatting with already. Does that make sense? Like, you know, if we have a bunch of staff members in the room, or I don't know, even I guess finance committee meeting people, or, you know, just like people who already know how to reach us and how to weigh in. I certainly want them to show up. I and want them to feel like they're participating, but I guess I just want to make sure that it feels accessible for someone brand new to the process. Is this making sense?
Yeah, I mean, I
Um,
wonder, I know that, you know, we might be talking with some town staff and some school staff, but I wanted to make sure we're as inclusive as possible. There could, I'm of the opinion of we shouldn't just invite everyone, and see who comes, but, and not
Okay.
target a specific group, but you all might have a different history or background that we might know differently or have other thoughts.
I
Might be
I
good
just I
to-
guess I just wanted to I just wanted to balance the fact that, like, if it's, I don't know how this works, right? But like, if the invite is coming from you and you're someone's boss, are they going to be like, oh, I have to go, and to fill the room more so with town staff, whereas we want to make sure we're capturing sort of from just general residents too. But in this particular meeting, obviously the whole process, we definitely want to be capturing and talking to the people you have listed here, but for this 1 hour or 90 minutes, I just want to make sure we're balancing that. Sorry, Christina.
Yeah, I was just gonna kind of, so as far as how we're gonna invite people, so you've got like town website, Facebook, Twitter. Do we want to do something, you know, through like the senior center, the library?
Ooh, like a poster?
Something, yeah, or if yeah,
Or-
some,
And I'm gonna do my
And-
newsletter that's gonna come out end of next week, so we can have
I think-
flyers, that we can post flyers up.
And we've had some success, I think, in a previous group with requests to like service newsletters. So like the COA has their own newsletter, right? So sometimes that helps things to have it come from a different delivery method than just the town manager newsletter. And the Friends of the Library have their own newsletter, like all of those places to give another plug for it, almost just like the way we strive to advertise for town meeting should be sort of all the same.
right. What
outlets.
about the farmer's market? Like, is there any way to?
Yeah, the
Put
wellness, the
something up
community
there.
wellness coordinator is gonna be there on the 11th, if we have flyers. I know it's short order, but
We also have town email lists for various, you know, categories.
right.
Christina, I thought you were going to sign us up for having a booth at the farmers market. As
She's gonna
a
fly
war-
in just for that too.
Yeah,
I mean, it could be something to think about as we talk about the strategic retreat, like maybe as we get closer and that sort of firms up, it could be considered like a sort of a dry run. It would definitely, I think, hit a different set of people.
Yeah.
But
Do we have like a code red alert, those phone call system, like we can notify town residents about what's going on?
We do have it, but I tend to not want to use it for these types of purposes because it is really for emergency purposes.
Okay.
We have the notify me through the website for people who have signed up for the listservs and the news flashes, so we can do it in that fashion to try to hit as many as we can through that news flash capability.
Mhm.
Kristen, I'd be happy to put together some, like a sort of a quick graphic for it too.
Okay.
Maybe
that'd be great.
maybe it's the same thing we use for the library and senior center.
Yeah.
Or post like hang in town hall too.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you. I mean, Monday is 2 weeks out, so just so we're all have the perspective, it's going to go quick.
yeah.
All right, I will work on this with Dan. We'll get it out to the full group and just get started on this and then know that you'll help with the flyer, Valerie, that would be great.
ASAP. Got it.
All right, do we want to end or just move to the feedback form? I think I'm comfortable with it. I think if we add the public forum of July 24th,
Oh, yeah.
the Millennium, I think I'm comfortable with that going out today.
Great. Did anyone else have a chance to look at it?
I think
I
I looked
did.
at it last week. It looked fine to me.
Yeah, I did try to incorporate any of the thoughts I was hearing. I moved, you know, it was funny was I moved, I realized I had, do you work in Westford, but that's not really a stakeholder, right? Like somebody that comes into town and is just working, right? So I changed it to, I own a business in Westford and then I work for the town of Westford, right? Those are the stakeholders. So I don't remember where I sort of got that template from, but the more I thought about it, it didn't make sense. And I made that not a required question. I moved the prompt down to, here, I can quickly share it with this. Nope. I moved the prompt down to that text box so that it's like right there. And Tom had made a recommendation to have a possible prompt about like, what questions do you have about the current budget? So that's also in there. And then in the response page, I added, I'll add the July 24th, but I added like how to watch us and all those links that Dr. Chu had highlighted as being helpful at the end after someone had submitted. So again, it can be a living document, right? Like, I mean, edits can be made anytime, but I think it's in a good enough spot to sort of try to start getting it up there.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
And Kristen, did you get a link to a spreadsheet? So the place, I think I shared a
Yes, I
document.
did. I did
okay.
get it. Yep.
Yeah. If you think, I mean, I don't know, it certainly, you just let me know who you think should have access to all the responses. I mean, it's certainly something we can be sharing periodically if we see something that's helpful to read, you know, to forward into one of our meetings, but I just didn't, or I could add people as view.
Yeah, you can put the spreadsheet into the OneDrive and just have view only.
Well, I think that works more as like a, like that would be like a snapshot in time, right? If I move it over to OneDrive, it's like a living document in Google. So
yeah,
like if someone adds a response, so maybe I could just do that periodically, like dump it in so that the whole group can.
Yeah, replace it like every other day or something if we're getting a lot of feedback, or once a week if we're not getting a ton of feedback.
I'll sign up for once a week and we can adjust as
We'll be
needed.
fine.
Okay, that sounds good. Great.
Great.
Thanks for those additional eyes.
All right.
And did that graphic come through too in email?
Yes. Yep, I got that.
Okay, great. Awesome. Okay, great.
Does anybody else have anything to wrap up on?
Did you say at the beginning we're planning to do the 12:30 to 1:30 slot next Wednesday also?
I think 12:30 to 2 next week with coming back together as a larger group. I'm going to try to push for like 45 minutes in the small group and then 45 minutes as a large group, or maybe even more as a large group, because I just think we have a lot to plan for the 24th.
Yep, I think that's fair.
Okay.
And at that meeting, we can kind of figure out our next steps for reaching out to department heads and other towns. Is that
Yeah.
kind of what we're thinking?
Exactly.
Yeah, those are two meaty discussions.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense.
Okay.
Great. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor. So Valerie,
Thanks. Aye.
Christina,
Aye.
Jenny,
Hi.
Kristen, aye. All right. We'll see you all next Wednesday.
Okay.
Thanks.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.